The village rested under the watchful sun, where life moved to the rhythm of tradition. Evening drums echoed across the fields, signaling the start of communal gatherings and shared laughter. Adewale's clay hut stood firm at the center of his farm, a symbol of his strength and devotion. The walls carried the weight of whispered prayers and family stories, while the thatched roof offered shelter from both the rains and the unknown. Known for his wisdom, Adewale was the first name on every villager's lips when guidance was needed. Adewale's words healed the wounded spirit, they said. His voice brought peace to feuds and hope to troubled hearts. Inside the home, Morayo moved with quiet determination, her hands weaving tradition into every moment. She ensured meals were shared with gratitude, and nightly prayers filled the air. Her children were her pride, though her heart held a silent burden, a secret known only to her. Kehinde and Taiwo were as close as two could be. Kehinde, practical and strong, balanced Taiwo's dreamy creativity. Together they carried their family's legacy, embodying the hope of a prosperous future. The family's generosity flowed into the village. Adewale's farm produced bountiful harvests that he shared during feasts. Laughter, food, and stories bonded the community, who saw the family as a beacon of harmony. Yet, beneath Morayo's calm exterior, unease stirred. Her secret, buried for years, weighed heavier as Taiwo's questions grew. His quiet curiosity had turned inward, and now fragments of truth began to surface in his mind. As their seemingly perfect life unfolded, the bonds of love and tradition stood strong, but the shadows of secrets lingered, waiting for the right moment to break free. The seasons began to change, but not as they always had. Adewale's farm, once the envy of the village, showed signs of struggle. The yams grew smaller, the cassava leaves withered before their time, and the maize stalks stood frail against the wind. Villagers, their voices low but persistent, murmured about a curse. "It is the ancestors," an elder whispered to another during the market gathering. "Perhaps something is hidden, something that demands to be brought to light." In the home, Morayo's silence grew heavy. Her watchful eyes lingered on Adewale when she thought no one noticed. The children, Kehinde and Taiwo, observed the tension with unease. "Mother has been restless," Kehinde said one evening as they sat outside their hut watching the stars. Taiwo nodded. "And father speaks less. Something is not right, Kehinde. Do you feel it too?" Kehinde frowned, unsure whether to dismiss his brother's intuition or agree. "We should not meddle. They are our parents, Taiwo. It is their burden to share, not ours to uncover." But Taiwo's curiosity was relentless. It pulled at him like the whispers of the wind, persistent and insistent. One afternoon, as he fetched firewood behind the hut, the ground beneath him felt softer than usual. He knelt and dug with his hands, the red earth crumbling away to reveal an old wooden chest. Inside, the chest held faded letters and trinkets, beaded jewelry, a shawl, and a small, weathered portrait of a woman he did not recognize. The name on the letters read, Adesuwa. The name on the letters read, "A Little Angel." That evening, as the family gathered for their meal, Taiwo placed the chest in front of Morayo. If they were going to reach their new home, "Who is Adesuwa?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. Morayo froze, her hand clutching the edge of the table. Kehinde looked from his brother to his mother, alarmed. Adewale's face darkened, and his voice, usually calm, carried a warning. Taiwo, there are questions better left unasked. No, father, Taiwo replied, his voice rising. Not this time. This chest was buried under our hut. It holds secrets, secrets that belong to us. Who is Adesuwa? Morayo's eyes glistened with tears she had long held back. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Adesuwa was your mother, Taiwo, she began, her words cutting through the tension. She was Adewale's first wife. She died many years ago. Taiwo's breath hitched. You said I was your son. That you were my mother. I am your mother, Mariah insisted, her voice cracking. I raised you, loved you as my own, but I am not the one who gave you life. The room fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down on everyone. Kehinde stared at his mother, his expression a mix of disbelief and betrayal. You lied to us, he said, his voice low but accusing. I did what I thought was right, Morayo said, her tears now falling freely. I wanted to protect you both. Taiwo, I wanted you to have a home free from the shadows of the past. But Taiwo could not hear her reasoning. His mind raced with thoughts of the woman in the photograph, the mother he never knew. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I need to know the truth, he said, his voice breaking. All of it. Adewale, silent until now, rose from his seat. His face was heavy with guilt. Adesuwa did not die of sickness, as we told you, he admitted. Her death was complicated. Her jealousy consumed her when she discovered things I am not proud of. In the end, it poisoned her life, and perhaps, he hesitated, his voice faltering, perhaps it took it as well. Perhaps it took it as well. Taiwo's knees felt weak. Kehinde sat frozen. His trust in the parents he once revered now crumbling, Kehinde thought. Morayo had no part in her death, Adewale continued, his voice soft. Her only crime was carrying the weight of my failures. She held this family together when I could not. Taiwo turned to Morayo, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. You should have told me, he said. You should have told me everything. I was afraid, Moraya said, her voice barely audible. Afraid of losing the family I worked so hard to keep together. Afraid that the truth would shatter the peace we built. He instantly stood erect again, but the peace was already shattered. That night, the house felt colder, its walls unable to hold the warmth of love that had once filled it. Each member of the family retreated into their thoughts, their hearts heavy with the truth that had been buried for so long. The bonds that had seemed unbreakable were now fragile, strained under the weight of secrets. The whispers of the village grew louder, and the family's harmony hung in the balance, threatened by the shadows of the past. The air hung heavy as Taiwo sat on the edge of the stream, clutching the letters he had found in the chest. Each word seemed to stab at the trust he once held for his family. The truth revealed itself like the uncoiling of a serpent. Adesuwa had not died peacefully. She had been poisoned. His mind raced with questions, but one thought consumed him. Was Morayo responsible? Morayo said never meant to let the vision come true, but poisoning the tree with foreign leather had endowed it with Taiwo's heart burned with suspicion. The warmth of his childhood memories now felt like a facade. As he returned home, his steps were deliberate, his face hardened with resolve. The whispers of betrayal echoed in his mind, louder than the sounds of the evening wind. That night, as Kehinde tended to the fire, Taiwo finally spoke. "Did you know?" he asked, his voice sharp. Kehinde looked up, confused. "Know what?" "About Adesuwa, about her death," Taiwo said, holding out the letters. Kehinde frowned, taking the papers. "What are you talking about?" "Adesuwa was poisoned," Taiwo said, his voice trembling. "And Morayo?" "She knows more than she admits." Kehinde's face darkened, his loyalty to their mother sparking to life. "You dare accuse her? She raised you, Taiwo. She gave you everything, even when she didn't have to. And yet she lied," Taiwo shot back. "Lies that have brought us to this moment. Lies that might have killed my real mother." The firelight flickered between them, casting long shadows. "You dishonor her with your doubts," Kehinde said, standing. "She is our mother, Taiwo, yours and mine. Do not let these letters turn you into something you are not." But Taiwo's resolve remained. "She is your mother, Kehinde. Mine is buried under a veil of lies." The brothers' bond, once unshakable, now fractured under the weight of suspicion. When Adewale entered the room, he sensed the tension. He sighed deeply, knowing the moment he had long dreaded had arrived. "Enough," he said firmly. "There is more you must know." The brothers turned to their father, their eyes searching for clarity. Adewale sat heavily, his shoulders slumped under years of guilt. He looked down at his hands and folded his arms. "It was not Morayo who poisoned Adesuwa," Adewale began. "Her death was a result of my failures. I betrayed her. My infidelity drove her into despair, and her jealousy consumed her." He paused, the weight of his words filling the silence. "I sought peace, but it was too late. Adesuwa fell victim to the darkness in her heart. Morayo knew the truth, yet she chose to carry the burden to protect this family. The fault lies with me, not her." Taiwo's fists clenched. "You hid this from me? From us? You let her suffer in silence." She drew in her hand and pressed her fingers together. The knots thickened, but Taiwo's face hid what she... Adewale nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I thought I was sparing you, but I see now that silence only deepens wounds." Before more could be said, the winds outside howled fiercely. The storm arrived without warning, lashing the village with rain and wind. The family huddled as the roof groaned under the force. A section of the hut collapsed, the clay walls crumbling as if to mirror the disintegration of their unity. By dawn, the damage was clear. The home that had once stood as a symbol of strength now lay exposed, broken and vulnerable. The village elders, hearing of the family's plight, gathered beneath the sacred Iroko tree. They summoned Adewale, Morayo, and their sons to address the turmoil that had unfolded. In the shade of the ancient tree, the elders spoke. "Truth, though painful, must be shared for healing to begin," said Elder Ogun, his voice steady. "Speak now, so the village may bear witness to your burdens." One by one, the family revealed their truths. Taiwo spoke of betrayal, his voice trembling with anger. Kehinde defended their mother, his words filled with loyalty and pain. Adewale admitted his sins, his voice heavy with regret. The villagers listened intently, their expressions a mixture of sorrow and understanding. When the family finished, Elder Ogun rose. "Silence is a seed," he said, and when planted in the heart, it grows thorns that tear at the soul. Your family has been pierced by these thorns, but the wounds can heal if you choose forgiveness. The elders conferred briefly before delivering their verdict. Adewale, Elder Ogun said, you will dedicate yourself to serving this community, mending the harm your silence has caused. Morayo, you are vindicated, for your actions were born of love, not malice. Taiwo and Kehinde, remember that bonds of family are not woven by blood alone, but by shared trials and forgiveness. The family left the gathering with heavy hearts, but a renewed sense of purpose. Their path to healing would be long, but the elders' wisdom gave them hope. As they stood before their broken home, they began to rebuild, not just the walls of clay, but the bonds that held them together. The storm had passed, and the promise of redemption lingered in the air like the first rays of dawn after a long, dark night. Adewale stood before his family, his gaze heavy with the weight of his failures. The morning sun cast long shadows, as if the earth itself bore witness to his confession. His voice, steady yet filled with regret, broke the silence. I have led this family for many years, he began, but my silence, my lies, have done more harm than good. A leader must carry the truth, even when it is heavy. Today, I relinquish that role. I no longer deserve the honor. Kehinde and Taiwo watched in stunned silence as Adewale stepped back, his posture no longer that of the commanding patriarch they had always known. Morayo, her face a mixture of sorrow and understanding, placed a hand on his shoulder. Adewale, she said softly, to acknowledge one's fault is to begin the journey toward redemption. You are still a part of this family, and we will heal together. But Adewale shook his head. Healing begins with service. I have failed you, but I can still serve others. That will be my penance. True to his word, Adewale dedicated his days to the community. He worked tirelessly in the village, tending to fields not his own, mending roofs, and delivering food to orphans and widows. His name, once whispered with doubt, slowly became a symbol of humility and redemption. Father has found his purpose, Taiwo said one evening as he watched Adewale return from the fields, his clothes stained with sweat and dust. Morayo, standing nearby, nodded. Service heals the soul, my son, but even as he redeems himself, he still bears the scars of his choices. Morayo herself bore her own struggles. Though the elders had cleared her name, some villagers still viewed her with suspicion. Whispers followed her in the marketplace, and children pointed when she passed. Is it true what they say? One woman murmured as Morayo walked by. Leave her be, an elder scolded. She has suffered enough. And the truth has been spoken. But Morayo found solace in her children. Kehinde and Taiwo, though once divided, began to rebuild their bond. One evening, Kehinde approached his brother, carrying a small basket of freshly harvested yams. Taiwo, he said, setting the basket down, I have been harsh with you. I let my anger blind me to your pain. Can you forgive me? The little girl asked as her eyes filled with tears. Who was she? Said the doctor, withdrawing his hand. Taiwo looked at his brother, his own guilt weighing heavily. And I have doubted your loyalty to mother. Forgiveness must go both ways, Kehinde. You are my brother, always. Ah. The two embraced, their bond renewed, Together they turned their attention to their family home. Side by side, they rebuilt the walls and thatched the roof, their laughter and shared effort mending more than just the physical structure. As the home neared completion, the family decided to mark a new beginning. At the site where the chest containing Adesuwa's letters had been buried, they planted a young tree. "This tree will grow as we grow," Morayo said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Its roots will remind us of where we come from, and its branches will reach for the sky, showing us the future we must strive for." Kehinde and Taiwo placed the tree into the earth together, their hands covered in soil. The act was simple, yet it carried profound meaning. The US dollar barely cost more than the price of a tea bag. When the tree was planted, the village elders called for a ceremony. Beneath the sacred iroko tree, they led the family in prayers and blessings. "Let this land be cleansed of the pain it has carried," Elder Ogun declared. "Let this family find peace in truth and strength in forgiveness." The family stood hand in hand, the warmth of the community surrounding them. As the sun set, Adewale spoke, his voice carrying the wisdom of his journey. "Secrets are like shadows. They grow larger the longer they are hidden. But truth, though painful, brings light. And in that light, we find healing." The family's story spread through the village, becoming a cautionary tale shared around fires and in gatherings. The lessons of truth, forgiveness, and redemption resonated deeply, ensuring that the trials they faced would not be forgotten. In the years that followed, the tree grew tall, its branches providing shade and its roots anchoring the family's legacy. And through it all, the family learned that love, when tested, could emerge stronger, carrying them through the storms of life. As the first light of dawn broke over the village, Adewale sat on a wooden stool outside his home. His gaze rested on the tree planted by his family, its young leaves swaying gently in the breeze. He took a deep breath, as if drawing strength from the land that had both nurtured and tested him. "Our lives," Adewale began, his voice steady yet reflective, "are woven by fate. But it is how we choose to respond to fate that shapes the patterns of our story." He paused, looking at his sons. "This family has faced storms, both from the skies and from within. And though I've failed many times, I have learned that truth, even when painful, can heal what silence destroys." Morayo, sitting beside him, rested a hand on his shoulder. "Adewale, your trials have made you a wiser man. We are stronger because of the lessons we carry together." Kehinde nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Father, I now see that love and forgiveness are not given because they are easy, but because they are needed. Without them, a family cannot survive." Taiwo, standing nearby, added softly, "What once divided us, now binds us. I have found my place, not in bloodlines, but in the bond we share." Adewale smiled at his sons, pride and humility mixing in his gaze. "You have both grown beyond your years. It is through adversity that we find our true strength." The family sat in quiet reflection, the air around them filled with unspoken gratitude. In the marketplace that evening, Elder Ogun stood beneath the sacred iroko tree, his voice carrying the weight of generations. "This family's story," he began, addressing the gathered villagers, "is not just theirs. It belongs to us all. It teaches us that silence can destroy, but truth rebuilds. It reminds us that accountability, no matter how delayed, restores balance. The villagers murmured in agreement, their faces solemn. Children listened intently, their wide eyes absorbing every word. Ogun continued, Aduale's journey, Morayo's strength, and the reconciliation of their sons show us that forgiveness is a gift, not just to others, but to ourselves. Without it, we remain trapped in the shadows of our own pain. A young boy raised his hand timidly. Elder Ogun, what should we do if we are hurt by those we love? The elder smiled, his expression kind but firm. You must face the truth, child. Pain cannot be ignored, but it can be healed. Speak your heart, seek understanding, and let forgiveness light your path. That is the way of justice, the way of harmony. As the villagers dispersed, Ogun turned to a group of young men and women. Remember this tale well, he said. Pass it on to your children, so they may learn from the mistakes and triumphs of those before them. The young people nodded, their expressions resolute. They understood that the story was no longer just a tale, it was a guide, a lesson etched into the soul of the village. Back at the family's home, the tree planted in the soil stood as a symbol of renewal. Its roots dug deeper into the earth, while its branches stretched skyward. Adewale watched it with a quiet sense of peace. Life moves in cycles, he said to his family. The storms will come again, but we have learned how to endure. Justice and fate are intertwined, and when we honor both, we find harmony. Murayo smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The lessons we carry forward will protect us, and those who come after us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the family stood together, united not by perfection, but by their shared journey. Their story would live on, not just in their memories, but in the hearts of the villagers who had witnessed their trials. And so, as the stars emerged, the family's bond shone brighter, a beacon of hope for generations to come.